Recently, iRacing added the Porsche Cayman GT4 Club Sport to the simulator. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why it's possibly one of the best, if not the best, race cars in the simulator. Welcome back to the Game of Muscle YouTube channel. Welcome to Donington Park. And remember, if you like sim racing and virtual reality, to click that subscribe button, click the bell, and also click the like button. Though the video might be terrible, so you might want to wait until the end of the video before doing that. Now, here we go. We've got the car set up ready. The race is about to begin. And, you know, the best place to possibly talk about a vehicle is in a Week 13 race, where the racing is obviously going to be tidy, clean, predictable, and plenty of fun, for sure. No craziness at all. Now, this Porsche Cayman GT4, I have to say, it's really surprised me. You guys know I'm not the biggest fan of iRacing, really. I mean, I'd say I'm a fan of the, I like the online structure, I like the laser scan tracks, I like lots of the VR in it, I like lots of aspects of iRacing, but when it comes to the actual cars, I only really like the Skip Barber and some of the oval cars. That's it. So I was when I picked this car up a week or so, well, at the beginning of week 13, so like a few days back, I was sceptical. I didn't think it'd be very good, but this is now. I think this is going to be the replacement for the Skip Barber, and let's pray that we get through T1 so I can actually talk and drive. I'm not expecting good things. This is going to be a miracle. Here we go. Lights the screen. No clutch on this car, so you have to hold the brake at the start. And off we go, starting from the back. Death inbound. So, this car is probably one of the most predictable to drive vehicles in iRacing after this Skip Barber. So predictable that people are managing to do Cirque du Soleil backflips in it. I mean, you normally only see that in a Skip Barber, you know. It takes drivers many years to do backflips in race cars normally, but in this, straight away. But what you get from this car is the ability to actually make mistakes, overdrive, catch it, and recover it. The car, my right's going to hit me, which, from my experience with iRacing, is pretty rare. Normally, when you drive over the limit in iRacing, less so with the latest tyre model, but when you go over the limit, you tend to just get punished, which kind of forces you to drive in a very almost sort of robotic fashion with iRacing, much more so than I'd say you have to with other driving simulators. I mean, I'm sure iRacers will disagree with this, but that's my my view of it. There goes another car. Now, the reason why this car is, Jesus Christ, the reason why this car is so manageable, in part, is probably because the real world car is, I would have thought. But also, you know, it's got ABS, it's got traction control. So with the ABS, you know, you just slap your foot on the brake, you don't have to worry about locking up. And with the traction control, it does reduce the chance of you losing the rear, although not for that guy who's just managed to kill the car behind us. Week 13, guys. But the thing with the traction control on this vehicle is that it's not so aggressive that you can't give it a bit of welly and get the back of the car out and hold it. Now this, I'm just gonna let him. I'm just gonna let him do that. No rush here, mate. We've got a full race. So I found even with the traction control on this car, it doesn't bog the car down and get in the way so much. Whereas a lot of vehicles with traction control on, it can just make it so the car just feels really slow and horrible to drive. Just trying to give him a bit of space there. He did car contact us. I tried to give him space, and as a result, I had a full English breakfast of sausage. But we got through there. We're fine. No flags. He's not dead. Happy times. And so what I found with the handling of this car is that we've actually, after the first 2 or 3 laps, once the tyres got up to temperature, and bear in mind, the tyres are actually, you know, it's iRacing. The first 2 or 3 laps cold tyres, you're going to be in understeer brick city and rear end loose city. I mean, you can catch it, you just have to be very, very careful with cold tyres. But once the tyres are warmed up, you can then move the brake bias further back, and you can then lean on the wheels a lot more, and it's even more forgiving. And I think with the setup that we've got, after some tweaking, we've got it so that the car's actually quite active and actually quite nimble going into the corners. If you are driving the default setup with this car, I would highly recommend changing it, because the default is very, very... it is understeery, but it's also like delayed. There's too much suspension travel. It's just very wish-washy, and I think that makes it a lot harder to drive than it needs to be. Personally, I'd rather have a slightly oversteery setup that's quick and responsive to your inputs, so you can then get it to turn in. But if you overdo it, you can also get it out of any situation quite easily without it slopping. So I'll show my setups at the end of this race. I may have had a little bit of help from a real-world Porsche driver when it comes to the car setup, so cheat your way to setups, that's how it's done. But another really nice thing with this vehicle that to me makes quite a big change from a lot of the cars in iRacing is that the force feedback on it, for the most part, is really like deep. Like you can feel a large amount of variation in the actual resistance for what conveys how much load you're putting on the fronts of the car, and also a little bit how much load you're putting on in terms of lateral. So when you're pushing it through a corner, you get a sense through the force feedback that you are actually putting the car under load, and that, you know, that you then learn that once you've lost it once when it's under load, you then learn that, okay, that's how much I can push it. So when I feel that feeling through my steering wheel, I'll be extra careful. And again, that's something I feel like a lot of iRacing cars don't quite capture, or if they do capture it, the point at where you lose it is just binary. Whereas there's good variation to this, both in the force feedback but also in the handling. Apologies, guys, for these complete lack of carrying the speed through the corners and racing lines. I am still learning this vehicle, and this is actually my first ever race at Donington in this car, so that's my excuse, YouTuber excuse. But the only really bad thing about the force feedback with this vehicle, there's 2 things actually. One you can fix with settings, and that is out the box default. If you're not running any filtering on your force feedback wheel, in my case, I'm using the FANATEC DD1. If you don't use any filtering on it, and especially any FEI setting, FEI, I always dyslexia, I always get that mixed up, but if you don't use any of that, it just feels like it really feels like a electronic steering rack, not attached to any wheels particularly. It just feels really horrible. At the beginning of this year, I was at the Autosport show in Birmingham, and I was messing around with electronic steering racks. It weren't connected to anything, so you could just feel the servo motor and the steering column and how it worked, and you could mess around with it on and off. It's actually really cool. And this car, with no filtering on the force feedback, feels like that. It doesn't feel satisfying. It might be realistic, but it doesn't feel satisfying. So with the FANATEC DD1, it'll be the same with the DD2. Oh, we've not hooked that up. What I've ended up doing is putting the FEI to 40. Still running 3 on the filtering, FEI to 40, and that makes it just feel a lot smoother, a lot more rubbery, and for me, a lot more immersive. I'm not saying those are necessarily good settings. I'm not saying that they're the best settings, but I found that just made it a lot nicer feeling to drive. Try it at your own risk. But the only so that makes the force feedback feel nice from a sort of player's perspective. The only other aspect of this car is that it's massively affected by track bumps. And on Donington, which is a pretty smooth circuit, it's not really a problem. But when you're at Sebring, which this was running on the other day, your wheel is like wrenching out of your hands. And the only solution to that is to change the suspension stiffness and car setup. Well, that's the only fix I can think of. I mean, you can add a little bit of dampening to your force feedback and stuff, but you know, that might be just what the real steering column in the car does, you know. And for the most part, on most tracks, it doesn't get in the way too much, so it's not really that big of a problem. So, yeah, I mean, you know what I'm like. Force feedback is really, really important to me. I drive from feel of the force feedback. I learn what the car, know what the car's doing from the force feedback feel to make up for the fact that there's no G-forces in a simulator. So it's really important to me, and I think this is probably one of the nicest feeling cars. He's going to not make that braking zone, surely. No, I'm going to leave space for him. That's it. Dodgy overtake if they're wearing a yellow car. So, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to not hit this guy. Yeah, out of all the cars in iRacing, I think the force feedback's great in this. Jesus. Pummeled and penalised. At least we've now got some racing action, guys, for you to watch. Hey, come on, guys. When did any TV car reviewer review a car whilst actually in a race? On the first time ever on a track. Noobs! All in, all in. When do I get to review a real-world Formula 1 car? In a race. Whilst driving. On that day, half the grid died thanks to a game of muscle. It was a stupid thing to do. The FIA regret it ever since. It's described as the worst disaster in Formula 1, nay, motorsport, since the great Le Mans crash. Oh dear. But, you know, other aspects of this car, other aspects of this vehicle, the sound is really nice on it. You know, you can really hear what the engine note is doing. The engine tone really lets you know when you need to shift. Really immersive sound, really full sound. A little bit grating, but that's the nature of this car. You know, it sounds a bit like that when you listen to onboards from YouTube and what have you. You know, it's quite nice. I like it. I find it very immersive. And imagine if you're playing in VR, the sound's going to be even nicer because you've got the nature of the head tracking and stuff combined with that. And then obviously the actual car 3D model and the visuals of the car, all totally spot on. The biggest standout thing of the 3D model and the actual visuals of the car is that this, of course, uses iRacing's new damage model system, which I think they've really dialed it in with this car. So with the Skippy, due to the Skippy basically having bicycle wheels attached by tinfoil to the vehicle, the wheels fall off rather easily on that, and I think the damage is a little bit over top. But with this, and with it being week 13, we've had a lot of chance to try this out. The car contacts and the damage you get from the car contacts seem really quite realistic. So, you know, you can have quite a good contact without it stupidly affecting the handling or stupidly damaging the car. But you know, a bit of bodywork might fall off, a wind mirror might come off. The bits of the car that you expect to fall off and dent and break do. But the bits that you expect to be pretty solid stay pretty solid. And you also get the really nice, well, it's actually quite depressing when it happens in a race, but the smash sound from the car contact is really loud and punchy, and it really does make you sort of go, oh God, that was a bit of a contact, which is something that's actually largely missing from a lot of simulators. The sort of combination of the sound effect with the actual visual damage in this really makes you cringe when you have a bit of an accident, which I think is quite a big thing. You know, you could easily go, well, you know, it's superficial. It's not, you know, it's not as important as the handling and the core nature of the car, but as an immersive experience with the vehicle, it's a really nice addition. Now, where I think this, what makes me really hyped for this car is that with it being a GT4 car, with it being relatively easy to actually handle and get to grips with, and it not being too fast, and the ABS and everything, it's a very approachable car. If they run this with as an appropriate series, and I hope they actually run it on its own, not just as a mixed series, and they run it on appropriate tracks, this car is going to make for some of the best, if not the best, racing on iRacing. I say my attraction to iRacing with the Skippy is that it's not necessarily my favourite car, but the racing, combined with iRacing's online system, tracks and everything, the racing in the Skippy is really, really good. It's a really popular car, it's really busy, and it's generally quite an approachable car, which makes for close, exciting racing. And this is literally Skippy 2.0. The only way that iRacing can really mess up this being Skippy 2.0 would be if they pick stupid tracks and if they decide not to run it at regular times, or they try to run it interfering with the Skippy. Because otherwise, if you're someone that's a fan of the Skip Barber and the racing with the Skip Barber, or just a fan of close online racing, you know, oh, come on, failing that corner. This will be a car that you'll absolutely love. Now, if only I could drive faster whilst talking. Come on. I've got the pace to get these two guys in front of us. We've only got... How long have we got here? 25... Okay, the front guys have gone through. Let's see if we can hammer this. Don't think we can. I'm getting the driver itch. We're reviewing the car, but I still want to race. I can see we're really not carrying the speed through here. The car behind had to avoid us there. Final lap here. So yeah, in short, if you were looking for another car in iRacing, this is the one to get. If you're an iRacing skeptic and you only wanted, you literally wanted the best racing cars for racing action, this and the Skippy are the two best cars. Maybe the TCR as well, but the TCR's front wheel drive. It's not a real car. I'm ready for the hate comments. Paul Smith be foaming at the mouth. Front wheel drive cars, guys, terrible. And the TCR in this, it drives like a snowplow. Terrible. This actually turns in on the steering, turns in on the brake. You can give it a bit of slidey drift action, and you can get away with a lot. Actually, because the race is just finishing now, what I'll do is miss the break point for that. We'll go across the finish line and we'll see what we can get away with the slides to demonstrate how much you can get away with it. I'm happy with that. 11th. That's good enough for me, considering the accidents we avoided. So, you know, let's give it a bit of wheel cam here. We can really throw it into that on the brakes. It is going into understeer there. Oh, no, that is the limit of it. It is still tight. I think if you're really used to Assetto Corsa, maybe even R Factor 2 and Race Room, it is still tighter. It is still less forgiving, but relative, as I say, to other iRacing cars, you can get away with so much. Look at that. And even, you can see there, we've gone into a slide, and then I used the brake to maintain the slide. And I feel like I'm relatively in control of the car whilst doing that. So it just means that when you're avoiding accidents and when you'll do something crazy, it's not race over, which makes for better gameplay. But there you go, guys. That is effectively our review, if you will, our first impression review. We've done a few hours of driving this car. First time on this track, though, but our sort of review of the Porsche Cayman GT4 and why it's a car you have to get if you want to play iRacing. Click the like button if you haven't yet. If you enjoyed it, now you've seen the video, you can make an informed choice. Subscribe. The subscribe button is over here. Please click the bell if you do subscribe. We're getting that. I can't see it. This is like augmented reality. And there's another video that you might enjoy. So until the next one, though, guys, I'll probably catch you in a live stream, hopefully, or see you in the next video. But happy tea drinking, and goodbye, everyone.